So, some of you have been on the journey already with us around the City of Gastronomy bid, but many of you perhaps are not that familiar with it. This came about, I think it was about 12 months ago, and Vicky was at the meeting actually when we started to talk about in developing a creative city as a strategy. Council's whole endeavour in this area has been to build the creativity of Bendigo in a general sense. We became aware of the UNESCO Creative Cities Network, and you probably, some of you will know about that network, but many of you won't, and I'll explain it a little bit in detail. But firstly, I just want to talk about the basis of this whole international network. It was established in 2004 by UNESCO, and they created this, and it had a bit of a slow gestation, but it's really taken off in the last few years. We've now got a situation where there are 180 cities around the world from 72 countries that are involved. There are 7 categories, categories like music and literature and film and so on. And one of those categories is gastronomy, food and beverages. And you might think that gastronomy has a connotation that this is sort of high-end eating. It's meant to embrace the full spectrum of food and beverages. And 26 cities have now joined that network, and you might think, oh, this would all be about big, high-profile cities. Many of the cities that are in the network are quite small. In fact, Councillor Jen Olden and I visited a city called Alba in northern Italy at 30,000 people. So they actually are encouraging of smaller cities. It's not a network about high-end, high-profile cities, big companies. This is about what people are doing at a local creative level, which is really what we've been hearing about. There are 4 cities in Australia at the moment who are part of the UNESCO Creative Cities Network. Melbourne, City of Literature; Sydney, City of Film; Adelaide, a City of Music; and as of late last year, Geelong, City of Design. So if our application is successful, and those applications are due in July next year, if our application is successful, we would become the first City of Gastronomy in Australia. Now, one of the beauties of the gastronomy category is it's the only category where you can talk about a region. And this has been very important, and it's really great to hear from people talking broader than just Bendigo here. This is about a whole region, because it's a region that produces your food and beverage. So the region that we've defined is actually a very embracive region. Many of you would be familiar with the term Loddon-Campaspe region, which is those 6 municipalities. That's Macedon Ranges, Mount Alexander, Loddon, Central Goldfields, and Campaspe, as well as Bendigo. So that's a region that's used by a lot of organisations. But one of the other regions that we've gone to is the North Central Catchment Management Authority region, which really embraces 9 municipalities and is the natural physical setting, if you like, of the region. So the Loddon Valley, the Campaspe Valley, the Avon-Richardson Valley, and that takes us right to the top of the Great Dividing Range. So that includes municipalities like Hepburn, but it also takes us into municipalities like Gannawarra. And the third region we've overlaid on this, and these regions almost coincide completely with each other, is the region of the Dja Dja Wurrung. And the Dja Dja Wurrung, about 2/3 of that North Central CMA region. And so this has been a very important part of our application. And at the moment, we know there's one other city competing with us already to be a City of Gastronomy. It's Launceston. The reality will be that the UNESCO office in Canberra can only support one city in a category. So we're already in a competitive situation. We'll know by about this time next year whether we've been successful. So what are we on about with this vision of being a UNESCO Creative City of Gastronomy? Many of the points that I'm making in the next 2 slides have really been covered by many of our speakers. We're talking here, yes, we're talking about a better understanding of what our food heritage is, what our current issues are around food consumption. It's very much around the idea that this embraces the whole community, and that's all socio-economic areas of the community, embraces our heritage. Think of when you talk about that region, think of things like the Swiss Italians who are around the Hepburn region. the Chinese that have added so much to our cuisine, the Karen community at the moment that are adding into our story. Vicky talked a lot about the social role, and others have talked about the social role of food. These are all important elements that we're trying to bring out in this application. We're talking about food security. We're talking about how food can be used to break down cultural barriers. We're all familiar with these concepts. And of course, we're talking about the health issues and lifestyle issues. So we based this application actually around 4 pillars. And the first pillar is really based on the idea that we had about, 50,000 years of sustainable food systems in this region. And one of the interesting things about working with the Dja Dja Wurrung on this concept is that, of course, they identified that they not only had an environment which was the harsh environment we're aware of, they actually had things like volcanoes were happening. So their landscape was changing. I was hoping the timing would allow me to show you the logo that we have developed for our application, which would become, if we are a City of Gastronomy, the logo we would use. We only just got the final proofs of it yesterday, and it hasn't been totally signed off, but the logo is based around the concepts that the Dja Dja Wurrung embrace. So the Indigenous community worked on 6 seasons. Those seasons are based partly on the weather, they're based on the movement of animals, they're based on the growing cycles of plants. And the logo that the Dja Dja Wurrung have come up with, which is fantastic really, it looks like a plate. It has 6 concentric rings around within the plate, and each ring is a different colour, and those rings, they vary in width and intensity, illustrating the fact that the seasons themselves are not consistent. 1/4 of that concentric series of concentric circles, and I'm terrible at describing something graphically, 1/4 has been cut out and it's been moved. The concept being that when Europeans arrived, we broke the continuous cycle. And that what we really have to do now is work to bring that back to a whole, bring that back to a circular, sustainable system. And this very much embraces the concept that the Dja Dja Wurrung have got. If you read their country plan has 9 pillars in it. One of those pillars is about bush tucker. It's about understanding the full range of production that was across the region. And it's quite remarkable, and I'll just use the example of the murnong or the yam daisy. It's an annual plant, but if you cultivate it, it becomes a perennial. And from all the information we have, if you start to go out into the Loddon Plains, there were very large areas where this was harvested, and it was a field of white flowers, yellow flowers. And this is the sort of work that we want to do with them. This encompasses what actually the application is about. The application is about, if you are successful, what will you do with the title? What will you do with the title over the next 4 years? One of the elements that we'll be doing is working with the Dja Dja Wurrung to roll out this country plan in respect to the food system. The second element of our application is that this is about creativity itself. And I'll use a couple of great examples, perhaps examples that wouldn't come readily to mind. So in this region, H.V. Mackay, around Elmore, invented the combine harvester. It absolutely changed agriculture. Now, perhaps, with hindsight, we perhaps cleared too much country and planted too much with wheat and grain and so on, but we did that invention. In 1858, the Bendigo pottery was established. It's the oldest continuous pottery in Australia. What's that got to do with gastronomy? They've been making the things we need to eat and drink with. At the moment, they're supplying 17 of Australia's 50 most highly recognised restaurants with their dinnerware. So here's a really interesting link with industry linked into this. One of the things, and it's great that talk we had on the Heathcote Community Garden and the work that Stephanie Alexander's done in that space, in having a look at and talking with other cities around the world that are cities of gastronomy, this kitchen garden idea within a school, we have nailed it just about better than anyone else we can find around the world. And I'll be interested to hear from Stephanie later if this is the case. Certainly when I've spoken to people in Italy and Sweden and the US, we're not getting that sort of evidence that that's as advanced as we are here. The third pillar is around health and wellbeing, and this is directly follows on from really what Vicky was talking about and other speakers. All the things that we've been talking about, what we're doing is trying to tackle the issues of nutrition, will form part of the application, the ongoing role. And the last pillar is climate change. And if you think about, this is, I think, very rapidly has emerged as the fundamental underpinning issue of the 21st century. But in terms of looking at gastronomy and looking at the food system, this is about restoring a food system, and it really takes us right back to that Indigenous history. How do we build a sustainable food system in an era of climate change, a water-stressed environment, food miles, all those issues, they all come back to sustainability. So, of course, UNESCO has embraced the 17 goals, the 17 sustainable development goals, and so our application is built around the theme of sustainability. So I'll leave it there and happy to talk to anyone over lunch or later today about any aspects you'd like to hear more about.